Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, your host, and joining me now is Wayne Madsen, as well as our reporters who went with us to West Texas to investigate the hotel where Antonin Scalia died. Joe Biggs and Kit Daniels will be joining us as well. We're also going to have a clip from the interview that Michael Savage had with Joe Biggs. Before we get into the Scalia death and the investigation that we did there, Wayne, I want to ask you, what do you make of the fact that Donald Trump is now talking about the missing pages from 9/11?
Well, he's certainly talking about something that no other candidate would even think about delving into. Most of all, Jeb Bush.
Oh, yeah. He avoided that.
Family, of course, has a lot of reasons to keep that information secret. But I think Trump is starting to even be more open about what he thinks about what's wrong with his country than even H. Ross Perot was.
Oh, I think so. Very much so, yeah.
Perot, of course, also fed on a lot of discontent. But Trump has done a couple of things here that I think are interesting. Not only is he basically overthrowing the Republican Party establishment, and Sanders is doing it for other reasons on the Democratic side, but he was ruled out by all the political professionals last year. Every time he made some controversial statement, he said, that's it, he's done. When he went after McCain and other things. He's probably going to destroy the professional political consultants, the political advertising consultants, because he's...
Oh, yeah, it's not having any effect. They've spent hundreds of millions of dollars for Jeb Bush. He came in with this massive war chest that was supposed to scare all the competition away. He's spent most of it now, and it hasn't done anything for him.
Absolutely. Yeah. Trump says he spent $5 million, whereas Jeb has wasted $140 million at least. And if this is the case, if Trump wins South Carolina, which it looks like he's going to do, and grabs another 50 delegates, he's unstoppable. And in the future, people will say, why do I need these political professional hacks, the Carvilles and the Karl Roves of the world? All I need is a Twitter account, a Facebook page, and, a website, because that's basically how he's getting his message across.
I think that's a key part of what's going on with both his campaign and Sanders' campaign. Yes. The fact that people are able to get the news directly. They're able to bypass and are more and more willing to bypass the established mainstream media and get their information directly from the candidates, get it from alternative sources to make up their own minds and do their own research. And that's really what we're trying to do with this investigation. I don't have any conspiracy theories about how Antonin Scalia died. I am skeptic of the various stories that we've heard, which they're conflicting with each other, that have been offered by the government. I don't think that you don't become a conspiracy theorist simply because you're a skeptic. You want to see a criminal investigation. Since when is a criminal investigation a conspiracy theory? It's not. We should have an investigation to rule out criminal actions. That's not a theory being offered.
Absolutely. And the thing is, without the autopsy, there's going to be questions obviously raised, and even those who are dismissing the idea that there was foul play involved are saying, well, why wasn't there an autopsy? There's so many aspects to this story. But even the Washington Post, which only really exists in Washington, D.C., to shoot down alternative explanations for news events, even they're saying, what was the purpose of this get-together? 36, from what we know, males show up on the long Valentine's Day weekend. It was President's Day weekend at this secluded ranch out in the middle of nowhere, where you have to sign a waiver over the medical issue. There's no medical.
You have to sign a waiver. All of us had to sign a waiver when we went in there, saying that we acknowledge that there is no medical help for hours. We know that people are coming to this ranch to engage in physical activities like quail hunting, horseback riding, ATV riding, okay, all of this stuff. So that brings to question the stories about his particular health, that we've heard, as well as what was really happening at the ranch. And you've got a story about that. We're going to talk about that in detail. I want to bring in our other reporters who are also joining us from the Situation Room, Joe Biggs and Kit Daniels. Give us your quick take on what you think behind the Trump exposure of the missing pages, calling out the Bush family for being liars about the weapons of mass destruction.
Thank you, David. I think it's exceptionally great that he is doing that. I was more, like you said, on the Rand Paul side, and now that he's out, there's really nowhere else to look other than Donald Trump. And the fact that he's coming out, he's willing to put himself out there, make himself a target, and he has made himself a target by bringing up this situation with the 28 pages. So it's unprecedented to see someone like this, a candidate running for this position for President of the United States, and seeing him coming out, hitting hard, going after the Pope when the Pope attacks him, going after the Bush family, going after the Clintons. I'm moving up too as far as, my wanting to back Donald Trump. I think he's doing some amazing stuff now. His unfiltered view on the world and how he gets up there and says what he wants. I believe he's going to do some great stuff for America. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's really key that he's got a very unfiltered view of the world. I mean, most politicians, when you see in a general election, there's always something that's off limits for all of them to talk about. I think even in the 90s and 92, when Bill Clinton and George H.W. Bush were running against each other, they had a gentleman's agreement not to talk about some scandal they had going on in Arkansas about guns. And I think it was at the time that's what it was. But it's great. He's talking about 28 pages. That's typically something that's completely off limits for any politician, no matter what kind of election you're running, to talk about. I mean, even like in a local county commissioner, you can't talk about 9/11. You're going to get run out of office. So he's really kind of pushing the Overton window, like I've said before, about what politicians are allowed to say that's not going to kill them in the election and in the polls.
Yeah, it's weird because anytime I've ever spoke to any kind of political person, it's always got to be off record. They'll kind of be like, we watch a show, or, we agree with this. This is the first time I've seen a candidate, someone in this position with this kind of power, this kind of social pull, so to say, to actually come out and hard charge these issues, really important issues that Americans should be concerned about. I mean, the fact that he's saying, hey, if I'm elected president, I'm going to give you the information. You're going to know who brought down those towers. And like you said, Iraq, Saddam Hussein, nothing to do with it.
I think the key thing, let me break in here quickly, Joe and Kit. I think the key thing with this, too, for me, is, as I said before, I'm very much interested in shutting down the attacks on our civil liberties. But where did they all begin? They all began with 9/11. That was always the basis for, we have to take all of your freedoms, we have to shut down the Constitution because 9/11. If the people understand that they have been lied to, that the basis of the security state is a lie, that is huge. And so that is a key thing. That if he will attack on that particular basis and say, you got these pages that you're not releasing, let us see that. And he's already called out Jeb Bush on lying about weapons of mass destruction. It's amazing to me that he would get booed for that at the GOP debate because everybody knows that it was based on a lie.
Do you think it was a smart play, though, David, for him to come out now and say that? Or do you think he should have waited until, maybe after he wins the election, possibly?
No, I think he should do it right now because I think it's going to, look, when he called out, regardless of what happens with the 9/11 issue, most people don't realize there are missing pages from the 9/11 report that had not been released. Building. They don't realize that congressmen have wanted to see that as well. So I think that's very important to get that on the table. But everybody knows that the weapons of mass destruction lie, the basis of Iraq. They all know that that was a lie. To call him out on that gives him stature that he did not have before in a lot of people's eyes. In terms of my viewpoint, it gave Trump a great deal of stature to call out Jeb on those lies. What do you think, Wayne?
Well, think of something else here. Trump is a major real estate developer in New York City, especially Manhattan. He's been in this game for a long, long time. He knows all the players. Yeah. He knows knows a lot about the World Trade Center from the time it was being built. And we have Bloomberg, for example, threatening to get in because he doesn't like Trump.
Yeah.
And Trump doesn't really care for him, I guess. But Bloomberg's friend is Larry Silverstein, who, of course, was the guy who, pull it down. So
Building 7,
what is Bloomberg so afraid of here? Is he afraid that possibly, the next thing Trump's going to talk about is Building 7?
Yeah,
where is this all going to end with Donald Trump? And people are getting nervous. Bloomberg's getting nervous, and some of the other real estate people up in New York are getting nervous. And I would say that Trump knows a lot more he hasn't talked about 9/11, but he may be saving it Maybe he's going to put it in his inaugural address. Wouldn't that make a lot of people upset?
That'd be great. You had a comment, Kit. Go ahead.
Yeah, I remember when Joe Biggs went up to New York City and he talked to people about Building 7, and a lot of people didn't even realize that the replacement building that was built on the site of Building 7 was new.
Yeah.
They always thought it had been there this entire time. So, yeah, you're right. Like Joe said, people don't know about the missing 28 pages. They don't even know about Building 7 and the fact that there's a new one where the last one was taken down by explosives.
And a lot of people don't realize 3 buildings, 2 planes. We just need, that's the Common Core math of 9/11. You know, we got 3 buildings that fell down right in their footprint, only 2 planes hitting 2 of those buildings. But when we come back, we're going to take a look at what we found out as we traveled to West Texas, as we went to the Cibola Creek Ranch, looking into the oddities around the inquest, as well as some other things with the airport next door. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight here with Wayne Madsen, Joe Biggs, and Kit Daniels. We've just returned from investigating the death of Antonin Scalia, trying to get some answers to some questions that really didn't make any sense. Of course, we all saw some odd things. That's why we went out there. We saw a story that was changing about the cause of death. We saw a phone-in inquest. And then we got out there and we found some other things that were perhaps even stranger. The fact that we had this Hearst tour of Texas that they took the body on when there was an airfield right across from the ranch. That raised some additional questions. And, of course, we have a story up on Infowars.com from Wayne Madsen, who is here with me. The media ignores why Scalia was on a free trip to this swanky resort. We're going to talk about that as well. And then we're going to talk about the feeling that we all got in terms of the fact that we were staying at the Shining Hotel. There was some really unusual aspects of staying in that hotel. I think we were all very happy to leave. It's a beautiful, swanky hotel, but there were some issues that we will talk about, and we'll show you some footage of that as well. Before we get to that, I want to let you know about the sales that we have. And I've been talking about the 10% discount on auto ship for a long time, and I did not realize that it extends beyond the initial sign-up period. And I just clarified that with Alex when I was talking to him. So do you mean you get 10% each month when you're on the auto ship? And he says, yeah, that's part of it. So I thought it was just an incentive to sign up. That's the way the information was put out there for me. So if you sign up for anything at InfoWarsStore.com, at InfoWarsLife.com, and get that on auto ship, you will not only be guaranteed that you get it on a regular recurring basis, but you will get it with a 10% discount as well. And that's important because we've got Super Male Vitality that is back in stock, but it is about to sell out again. The reason it's about to sell out again is because we do hold that back for people who have signed up for auto ship. We also have Liver Shield back in stock. That's also available now at InfoWarsLife.com. If you want to make sure that you're going to get these products on a regular basis so that you don't have a gap, that you're taking it on a continuing basis, then make sure that you sign up for auto ship for things like Super Male Vitality, for things like Silver Bullet. That way you'll get it each month and you will get it at 10% off. Let's talk a little bit about the hotel a little bit. Everybody can chime in. We've got some information with the hotel. I don't know. We all had this same statement. I had texted my wife. I said, it's very isolated, very quiet. There's just a few people here. They're very suspicious of us, so they're kind of watching everything we do, peeking around the corners, looking at us. I feel like I'm at the Shining Hotel, even though it's not that cold here. And everybody, as they came in, had that same statement.
Yeah, I mean, I thank God there wasn't a raging blizzard while we were there. I would have really gotten concerned. But obviously the people who work for Mr. Poindexter, John B. Poindexter, who's the owner, it was built in 1993. And it's very interesting. We talked about the airfield. The airfield, which is the Cibola Creek Ranch Airfield or Airport, is owned by a company called Southwestern Holdings Incorporated out of Houston. Mm-hmm. Who's the owner? Yeah. Mr. Poindexter.
Yeah. So there's an airport right across from the ranch, right, and it's owned by the owner of the ranch.
The owner of the ranch. Yeah. It's also serviced by a charter airline company called Cibola Air. Who's the owner? Mr. Poindexter.
Yeah.
So this is like he's got the whole thing. He's got the whole thing wrapped up.
And of course, the issues that you raise in here, and that's also been raised by a couple of mainstream media outlets. Why were all these people there? Who are these people? Was this a free gift to Scalia? Because one of Poindexter's companies, and he's got many companies, one of his companies had been before the Supreme Court, and there was a favorable decision on that Supreme Court, and Scalia sided with that.
Yeah, well, basically the court decided not to hear the case. It was brought. It was an age discrimination case brought by an employee, and they just said, we're not going to hear it.
Which allowed it to stand.
Which allowed
favorable decision
the
to
lower
stand.
court decision against the plaintiff, against the plaintiff to stand. Now, Scalia, if you look at his record, he's one of the top 2 frequent flyers on boondoggles, where somebody picks up the tab. We know he had been in Asia recently on a speaking tour. He had been in 3 weeks before, he was in Dallas, where the Marshal Service and the Secret Service arranged for him to get a haircut. Now,
isn't that interesting? And they can't be bothered. We're told
they can't be bothered
after the
about
fact,
this. Right?
Yeah, we're told after the fact. For the guy who went with him on that trip to Asia was talking about how strong and vital and energetic he was. He said that the day after. Then 2 days later, he goes, he'd just essentially been given a death sentence by his doctor, who's a rear admiral, a politician in Washington. And yet this doctor allowed him to travel to this remote area where you have to sign a release saying that you understand there's no hospital care here. He stood down, didn't have a physician traveling with him, did not have any security with him, and yet he had Secret Service arranging for his haircuts 3 weeks earlier in Dallas. Stay with us. We're going to be right back. Wayne Madsen, Joe Biggs, Kit Daniels.
We're on the march. The empire's on the run. Alex Jones and the GCN Radio Network.
North Korea is planning a terrorist attack on South Korea. This according to the National Intelligence Service that says North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-un, gave the order to begin preparations. The NIST warning covered a large number of possible targets, including subways, shopping malls, and even a nuclear power plant. All key lines of communication between North and South Korea have been cut off.
I've long predicted in my World Affairs briefs that the North Korean attack on South Korea will be a trigger event for World War III, and you'll probably have a nuclear EMP and nuclear strike on America within a week after that starting.
That was political scientist and author of Strategic Relocation, Joel Skousen, who says that a fight between North and South Korea might be a trigger event to World War III. Meanwhile, U.S. forces in the region are making their presence known. And you can learn more right now at Infowars.com.
For all of recorded history, civilizations around the world praised the health benefits of silver. At InfoWars Life, our mission is to bring you the highest quality, purest, cleanest, effective colloidal silver on the market today for the lowest price available. Now, InfoWarsLife.com has taken colloidal silver to the next level using a cutting-edge technique that is free of toxic artificial additives. InfoWarsLife.com developed a silver bullet by closely working with one of the top silver manufacturing labs in the United States. We set out to bring you the very best at the lowest price. Find out more about the proprietary development of Silver Bullet at InfoWarsLife.com. In these times, it's essential to have high-quality colloidal silver on hand. No survival chest is complete without Silver Bullet. Exclusively available at InfoWarsLife.com. Secure your Silver Bullet today at InfoWarsLife.com or by calling toll-free 888-253-3139. Tell folks how you got introduced to Super Male, and then when Super Female came out, tell us what happened.
After I saw such a huge positive change in my husband, I had to try it for myself.
Talk about the effects.
I feel great when I wake up in the morning. I have drive to go to the gym. I feel like I look better. I feel better. I feel sexier. I love it. Even if you don't believe in supplements, take the challenge. Get a bottle of Super Male, a bottle of Super Female. Check it out for yourself. Consult your physician. Visit InfoWarsLife.com today. This is life-changing. Shower filters. We're introducing the best yet. The brand new ProPure ProMax high-performance shower filter. It removes and reduces over 200 contaminants while preserving a strong, powerful flow. This new 4-stage filtration process helps protect the largest organ in your body, your skin, from the unhealthy contaminants in the water. You can find more details on this amazing new filter and free shipping at InfoWarsStore.com or call 888-253-3139 to order your ProMax shower filter from ProPure today.
We are on the march. The empire is on the run. Alex Jones and the GCN Radio Network.
We're living on the edge.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and joining me now is Wayne Madsen, Joe Biggs, Kit Daniels. We have all been out, along with Josh Owens, our cameraman. We've all been investigating the circumstances of Justice Scalia's death because there were a lot of unusual things that were told. And we're pretty skeptical when we get answers from the government. We don't just repeat the press releases like the mainstream media does. You know, if you are skeptical, if you question what is being told to you, especially if they change the story as the days go along, then you are called a conspiracy theorist. We didn't offer any conspiracy theories about how or why Justice Scalia died. We simply said we would like to see you follow procedure and do an investigation. So we went to the area. We tried to talk to some of the people involved. We did talk to many people in the area, had some productive interviews. One of the things, besides the questions raised by the circumstances of his death, the lack of an autopsy, what they did with the body afterwards, driving it all over Texas instead of flying it back to Washington. In addition to that, of course, there's the issue of the hotel and why there were 36 guests there. And of course, while we were there, the entire hotel was empty. And as I said earlier, I think that's one of the reasons that it kind of felt like The Shining. We were the only people in that hotel. Joe and Kit, did you get that feeling as well?
Yeah, of course. I mean, as soon as we walked into the ranch, you know, you're already signing this waiver, you know, and then the lady hands me a piece of cardboard with just the name of the room and Colonial North, I think was what it was. And I go, okay, where's the key? And she goes, we don't use keys.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's really weird. I've never been to a hotel where you lock the door from the inside, but you can't lock it from the outside. So you go out quail hunting or ATV riding, whatnot, but you have to you leave your possessions in your room, but you can't lock them up.
Yeah, and if you are in there asleep and your door's locked, who's the only person that can get in?
Exactly.
Someone who works there.
And of course, there's also no telephone in case you need to call because you have health issues, like we're told now.
Well, I mean, I remember when we sat down that first night for dinner, you know, I was actually getting ready to take a picture of all of us at dinner, and it was on that selfie mode. And when I had the camera turned around, I could see what was behind me. And I turned around, and there were all these, like, demonic, devil-looking masks all up on the top part of the wall, lining that whole dinner area. Yeah, one of them was super creepy. It reminded me of that... What is that movie? Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah, exactly. That's
you guys like got some B-roll you can run of that. We've got some pictures of those masks that are there.
Yeah, it's really creepy that Scalia's last meal was perhaps under all those masks.
Yeah,
a very devout Catholic. Also,
I mean, another strange thing about this resort ranch, whatever you want to call it, is in the area where David and Kit stayed, where you guys were, these beds on the outside,
exactly,
that
on the
line
patio.
The whole area, you know, and having these private events that are men during Valentine's weekend, you know, it's really an odd thing.
Yeah, to get put in the perspective, it's kind of like you had like a hallway / patio outside all the rooms, but the wing we were staying at was in this patio were like beds. There weren't even day beds; they were actual beds that were set up. You know, you had beds and then bookshelves and then reclining chairs, sofas.
Demonic statue thing.
Exactly. So it was really odd that you had not only these beds, but even in the rooms, all the beds were like twin beds. It's like, this is not a place if you're married, you would take your wife to.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very unusual. And of course, the fact that they had virtually no guests the entire time we were there, that I think raised questions to me, which you raise in your article, Wayne. What is the purpose of this hotel? I mean, is this simply a prestigious tax write-off that he can bring in political friends and you know, have private parties with them? Because he's saying he does this frequently, does this multiple times a year, bring in several dozen guests, and yet we see absolutely no paying guests while we're there, except for we're the only people in the entire hotel. That's why one of the reasons why it felt so creepy.
And he said that he allows these people to stay for free, yet we also Poindexter, the owner, said that he paid for everything but the flight in. Well, we know that Scalia arrived on a private jet at the airport, at the ranch airport, around noon on that Friday. He was found dead Saturday morning. And now we're told that, of course, Scalia didn't pay for that trip. So what is this all about? You know, we know politicians are owned and operated by special interests. But the problem with judges, especially Supreme Court justices, is that the decisions they make, which establish case law, far outlives them and the presidents who nominated them. And those laws affect every man, woman, and child in this country for decades, if not centuries afterwards. So the fact is that he's like involved in accepting gratuities from a guy who had a case before the court, I think raises more troubling issues than his suspicious death.
A man of that stature, when you find someone like that dead, there's already motive there. There's already motive there.
It's really funny how they can fly him into this private airport, but they can't fly his body out of the private airport. They got to take his body to Alpine, I think, to get embalmed, or was it
El Paso?
Yeah,
let's talk about the circuitous route that they took, because that was very interesting. Take get a document shot of the pictures that Wayne has here. These are postcards that he got at the hotel, and you can see this first one right here that has a Chinook helicopter. That is flying right over the man-made lake there, and the room that Scalia was in was right adjacent to where that helicopter is. But then the other picture shows the airport that is right across from there. And, of course, Gulfstream planes can land in that airport that is owned by the same person who owns the hotel.
That's right. That's correct.
Of course, Gulfstream airplanes that look somewhat like this. I'll put that there. And then the interesting thing is the route that they took and the amount of time that's involved here. From the Cibola Creek Ranch to Marfa, where the judge, Cinderella Guevara, was, is only 43 minutes. But, of course, it was too far for her to drive. That's why she did the phone-in inquest. She could not drive 43 minutes. Now, understand that in this area of Texas, 43 minutes is next door, Everything.
But David, there's a lot of business going on in Marfa. I mean, she's swamped. She was swamped with media requests. She's swamped with a lot of things. You know, Marfa's a booming town. They got those lights at nighttime. I mean, she's busy.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a look at the route that the hearse did after the death. There's a lot of time involved there. They took the body from the Cibola Creek Ranch. And they went, and let's put this document here. You can see they go from the ranch here. They go up to Marfa, 43 minutes. But then there's a funeral home that's in Marfa, but they don't use that funeral home. Instead, they go to Alpine over here, Now, that whole trip from the ranch to Alpine, that is 1 hour and 12 minutes. Then later they go, and I'll show you this ranch, this picture here. They go back in the opposite direction. They backtrack and go further west. They go from Alpine then to El Paso, and that is a 3 hour, 15-minute ride. So total time they've driven this body around, passing up two funeral homes in two different towns with funeral homes in them, is 4 hours and 30 minutes. Now, if they were to use a Gulfstream, which is across the street, the average cruising speed of Gulfstream is 560 miles an hour, 3 hours and 20 minutes to go 1,900 miles, which is the distance to D.C.
Right.
So instead of taking a 3 hour, 20-minute flight to D.C., they take a 4 hour, 30-minute hearse ride around Texas.
And even though we know that the wife didn't want, Mrs. Scalia requested no autopsy, there could have still been an inquest done by his doctor at Bethesda Naval Hospital,
precisely,
or a certified medical examiner in his home county of Fairfax County, Virginia, but not this situation where a judge makes a determination without the body being viewed by her over the telephone.
Wayne, I got a letter from a lawyer, a Texas attorney from Woodlands, and he said that, quote, Cinderella Guevara is the county judge, and she made the decision that Justice Scalia died of natural causes. However, she did exceed her authority in making this declaration. So, I mean, and like what we talked to the former deputy under the sheriff out there in Presidio County, was that he could get an autopsy all the time. Not only that, but it was unprecedented for a county judge or a justice of the peace to not show up to see a dead body when the circumstances of the death are not known.
Well, last night, even in the New York Post came out with an article, it was yesterday sometime, saying they talked to one of the top pathologists up in New York and said that they believe it's extremely possible for Scalia to have been poisoned.
Yeah.
They said that is definitely a possibility, and the fact that this body's taken to El Paso, everything's drained out, thrown in the sewage, there's no way of ever knowing now. We'll be asking this question for years on end. This will be a top story for years. People talking about it. It's ridiculous what they've did to this man, because this is a man who fought for the truth. This is a man who followed the law, and no one had his back. No one followed the law to make sure that he was taken care of after he left.
And that's why we went out there, because here you have someone who is the major obstacle in the way of Obama's agendas, major obstacle in the way of globalist agendas. He's the person who really holds the balance of power in the Supreme Court, in the sense that he was the intellectual center of the conservatives. And that in and of itself says that we should have an investigation to rule out conspiracies, to rule out foul play. And we went out there to ask these questions. The judge would not talk to us. We've shown you the videos of that. And as we were doing the report, we also had someone come up to us and say, this is not the first time this has happened. We've had a mysterious death back in 2013. And it looked to many of us, the immediate family, as well as to the railroad investigators. This was a body that was run over, laying on the tracks. And they said, it looks like this lady who had only been married for 6 months, it looks like she was placed there as she was unconscious. That was what the railroad investigator said. However, the same judge, the same sheriff, ruled it a suicide on the basis that she had resigned her job recently. And she had just recently been married as well. So she had had a change in life circumstances. So the family was very upset about that. Many people in the town were upset about that. And so we looked to see, since the sheriff wouldn't talk to us, since the judge would not talk to us, we said, well, let's ask a deputy about this, because it turns out that there's an election coming up. A former deputy is running against this sheriff, and he also had a lawsuit at one point in time alleging that the sheriff had fired him for unjust cause, saying that there was a gun that the sheriff was demanding be turned back to a friend of his, and there was a restraining order against this friend. Ultimately, the sheriff set that aside and returned the gun to the son of the individual who himself had a felony. And so he said that there's been a lot of situations like this where the investigations are handled differently depending on who it is, as well as the way the citizens are treated.
Yeah,
as well.
David, the very key thing that this deputy said was the fact that he worked that case in 2013 with the lady that was found dead in the railroad. And the deputy said he had the most experience of all of them, including the sheriff, on homicide investigations.
Yeah, he said he'd been trained by Texas Rangers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The sheriff called him in late that night to deal with the body, but he had him only doing traffic control in Marfa, Texas, a town of 2,000 people.
Yeah, it's really weird, though. This guy did have the most training, and then the same thing happened with Scalia. Mm-hmm. You know, this sheriff with no training whatsoever, a U.S. Marshal that has no training in this. You have a judge that can't even take a 43-minute drive out there to do her job because a Supreme Court justice was found dead. You know, you have this path.
And this was something that happened over a period of at least 14 hours. We talked about the circuitous route that they took with the body.
So in 14 hours, someone
knew who they were dealing with by that time. Yeah. Before we run out of time, I want to play some excerpts from an interview that Joe Biggs had with Michael Savage, who is also concerned about the way this was handled. Let's play that interview.
Joe Biggs here with Infowars.com. Now, on February 16, 2016, I had the opportunity to go on the Savage Nation and speak with Dr. Michael Savage about our investigation into the death of Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia. Here are a few clips from that interview.
Joining us right now is a reporter for Infowars.com, Joe Biggs. Joe, you're down in Texas. Where are you? Near the judges' chambers?
We are in Marfa, Texas, just outside of County Judge Cinderella Guerrera's office.
Cinderella couldn't pronounce the words myocardial infarction. How could she declare he died of a myocardial infarction, then change her mind?
Well, here's the thing that you have to understand, Dr. Savage, is the first two justices of the peace that were called were out of town that day. They were about 120 miles away at some event. You mean to tell me when that name came over the wire, they didn't drop what they were doing and take the time to drive a few hours to come out here? Now, before that, John Poindexter, the guy who owns the ranch, called the feds. The feds flew in. You mean to tell me they couldn't have picked one of these people up? Instead, it was passed on to a third person, Judge Cinderella. Now, in the past, in 2016, she has made some botched calls before.
Oh, really? What did Cinderella do in the past that was questionable?
In 2013, there was an incident in Big Bend where an unconscious woman was laying on the train tracks. A train ran over her and sliced her into pieces. Now, the railroad company came out, did their own internal investigation, said that it should be investigated. The family came out and said they wanted an investigation. They called Cinderella, and she goes, "Oh, nope, suicide," and ended it right there. Did not go in, did not do an investigation.
So Cinderella is who is she? She's a low grade local judge.
Pretty much, she's a county judge here in Marfa.
Marfa, Texas. Wow.
I know. I mean, there's a lot of things surrounding this. I mean, like you said before, and I've heard other people say, if this was a Republican president, a ranch owned by a Republican donor, and it was a liberal judge who died out there, the entire left would be screaming and crying, asking for an investigation. As soon as his name came down over the wire, they should have been locked down. They should have called for an investigation. They should have done an autopsy, toxicology, and all of that. Instead, they take the body and drive it to El Paso. Now, we have an investigator in El Paso right now who just spoke to the mortician who did the embalming. They just drained his fluids and threw them into the El Paso sewage.
Oh, my God. You're kidding me. They did that already?
Yes, that has already been done.
Oh, my God. Oh, so they're covering it up already. This is terrifying. You would think this would happen in Paraguay or in Uruguay in the 1970s, but it's happening here now under our dear leader. Joe, has a single politician, one politician, called for an investigation?
Not that I'm aware of, but all I hear are homicide investigators. There was one of the main homicide investigators for D.C. Police all over the country have said that this should be investigated. There's an outcry by people who are specialized in this. Now you have this, Texas or this U.S. Marshal that came out. He's not even trained in homicide, and yet he's the one calling and going, "Oh, this is just natural causes. Let's pass it."
Wait, right. He was that U.S. Marshal was appointed by Obama. Have you interviewed him?
No, not yet. We just got into Marfa. We're going to the ranch next. We're going to be here for the next few days. We've got a long list of people that we will be.
I suggest that you bring your food with you. I would suggest you don't accept their hospitality for any meals.
Oh, yeah, I'm definitely throwing the pillows off the bed.
By the way, do you know anyone who sleeps with a pillow over their head? I haven't met one yet.
I've never heard of it. I've actually stopped and talked to a few people and asked them if they thought that was normal. And everyone's going, no, that's pretty.
Well, maybe it's normal, but you see, maybe it's not normal in that Texas county, but it could be normal amongst Italian Americans of 79 years of age. We have to interview all 79-year-old male Italian Americans and see what percentage of them sleep with pillows over their head, because I'm sure the Washington Post will report.
Okay, so we don't have time to play the rest of that interview, but you can see that up on Alex Jones's YouTube channel. Again, that was Michael Savage talking to Joe Biggs as we were reporting the situation there. We're going to be back with Wayne Madsen, Kit Daniels, and we're going to talk about Scalia's son saying that conspiracy theories about his father's death are hurtful. We'll be right back. Good night here with Wayne Madsen, Joe Biggs, Kit Daniels, and we have just returned from Texas asking questions, as many people are asking questions, of what happened there. And as you're looking at that B-roll there, that was those were the kind of satanic masks that hovered over our dinner table every night as we ate alone in this massive hotel. And as I said, we're not the only ones who are asking questions. We have a retired homicide investigator, Mr. Ritchie, says you've got a justice of the peace pronouncing death while not on the scene without any medical training, opining that the justice died of a heart attack. What medical proof exists of a myocardial infarction? Why not a cerebral hemorrhage? Right? So there's all these different issues, and yet his family says that conspiracy theories about his father's death, his son says, are hurtful. I think what is hurtful is to set aside standard operating procedures, especially in the death of someone who is this prominent and also who has a legacy of saying, we're going to follow the Constitution as written. We're going to follow the laws as written.
It's a very good point you bring that article up, David, because I was looking at it myself just now. Yeah, the son is saying that, commentators like Michael Savage and Alex Jones concern his father's death are a hurtful distraction to his legacy about the so-called conspiracy theories.
So who said the pillow was on the head?
Yeah.
John Poindexter.
Yeah,
we didn't come up with that.
Yeah.
Here's my point. Yeah.
Who said it was a heart attack? We didn't say that either.
Exactly.
That was a conspiracy theory by the judge.
When you're a public official, you're held to a different standard than a private citizen. So, yes, the public is going to demand an autopsy because this could very well be an issue of national security. A. B. Also, it said, Laura Ingram said the speculation was the most stupidest, ridiculous thing. But if we had an autopsy, there wouldn't be any speculation to begin with.
Exactly.
If you find a dead illegal alien in a field, what are you going to do? They automatically do an autopsy. Yeah. Why can't we do this for a Supreme Court justice?
We can get autopsies on illegal aliens, but not a Supreme Court justice.
That's beyond.
They don't have a problem with a judge who is not there without any medical training speculating that it was a heart attack, and yet they have trouble when we talk about that. But I want to get Wayne Madsen's take on this. Wayne, what's your final take on this?
Well, I would note what Cesar Melendez said, the man who was the former deputy sheriff down in Presidio County, who's running against the current incumbent who's been there for a couple decades, Dominguez, who botched this entire thing up. Former Deputy Melendez said anytime they would discover a body, whether it was an unattended death in somebody's home or out in the field, it was a migrant, illegal migrant, they would treat it as a homicide until they ruled everything else out. And then they could determine whether it was an accident.
And that's not a conspiracy. It's called a criminal investigation.
That's proper protocol. Procedure. Yeah. He said all these procedures were violated in this case. And, there's a couple things with the son of Scalia saying what he's saying. Either his father died an embarrassing death that the family didn't want the autopsy, because it might reveal what was in his system as far as any sort of pharmaceuticals, alcohol, perhaps. Or the other thing is, and this happens a lot in British intelligence, when they target somebody, they make it look like a suicide. But it's not just that. They murder the person, make it look like a suicide. Usually they're found hanging. Then they put women's underwear on a man and then spread a bunch of pornography around the floor. What happens is the family is so upset and so embarrassed, they don't want any kind of investigation. They'll go along with the official story.
They did that with a spy in the bag. They did all that you're talking about, and then put him in the bag, and people said, well, he committed suicide by putting himself in a bag. It's like, you got to be crazy. You can't possibly do
David, that happens all the time.
Exactly.
This is what happens when you get an autopsy.
A lot of questions about that. Well, thank you so much, Wayne Madsen, Kit Daniels, Joe Biggs. That's it for today's broadcast. Join us tonight for the InfoWars Nightly News at 7 Central, 8 p.m. Eastern with Leanne McAdoo.